What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill. Jay Miller, if you like. So let's get into it. So today, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. But yeah, so today I want to kind of talk about just a number of different things with the Dallas Cowboys. Kind of starting with their defensive coordinator search. So a little bit has changed since the last time I talked to you guys here. Looks like they have a second round of interviews with a few candidates. Durante Jones, who's the Vikings passing game coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, ex head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and also Christian Parker, the Eagles passing game coordinator. So, out of all those guys, it's interesting. Durante Jones, the Vikings passing game coordinator, he's never called the defense before. Kind of the same with Christian Parker. Jonathan Gannon has called a defense before. It's a little bit different for him. But some of the things that happened in Arizona lead you to believe he kind of went out with not really a good defense, even though he was calling defensive plays. They whooped up on the Cowboys a little bit, but for the most part, their defense had been below average pretty much his entire time there. So there's that. So a lot of people, including myself, have reservations on hiring Jonathan Gannon only because it's basically the same thing you just did. Excuse me, with Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus's defenses with the Bears were not that good. By the time he left, they pretty much wanted to run him out of town. And then same thing with the Colts. Apparently, in the end of his time with the Colts, he was not necessarily going to be asked back as defensive coordinator after that final season, but the Bears ended up hiring him as a head coach, so they never had to go through and kind of fire him. So there's some interesting things there. So I don't know. And Jonathan Gannon is a disciple of Matt Eberflus, which kind of makes things even weirder. So I know he has ties to Clayton Adams, who's on the staff, and maybe narrowing his focus instead of having to head coach the whole team, maybe narrowing his focus on just defense might help him out a little bit. But honestly, I tried to talk myself into the same thing with Matt Eberflus, and then by the time we got there, Matt Eberflus wasn't really, doing his thing like I thought he might do. Now, as far as Christian Parker, he did a pretty good job with both the Eagles corners. When you talk about Cooper DeJean, and Quentin Mitchell, definitely developing those guys, and they both made the All Pro team this year. He also had a hand in developing Patrick Surtain. When you talk about that, you think about having a young guy such as Revel, and then having a talented guy like Bland, even though he's coming off a foot injury, and then having some guys like Kalen Carson in the mix, Josh Butler in the mix, and then, we got to see from there whether it's free agency or draft, whether or not we are, add more. But we're going to add more. It's just who's that going to be? And then seeing if that person can get the most out of those guys. Being that he's never coordinated a defense, it'll be interesting to see who he would try to, poach around the NFL, what kind of staff he would try to put together as far as his defensive backs coach, even though he might specialize in that a little bit, and linebackers coach, and whether or not he'll keep Aaron Whitecott, and just all those different things. And also with Durante Jones as well, seeing if he brings over some of that stuff that Brian Flores was doing as far as, coming up and showing cover zero and then dropping back out into different zones, and, having your guys being smart and be able to play correct technique and correct leverage, good eye discipline on the plays, just kind of those things that the Vikings were known for, seeing if he brings that. So that's those three candidates, and then also there is the candidate that we all want, which is Jim Leonard, but he's still in the playoffs. So you have to either wait until the Broncos lose, but I've also seen some people saying that, oh, we can't interview him if the Broncos win. That's not true. On that bye week in between the Super Bowl, the Cowboys can absolutely interview Jim Leonard. So I would expect that if they do win, that's the time that the Cowboys will bring him in for a second interview. That's the guy we all want, but also He's kind of a hot name right now, so I know the Giants are going to be looking at that guy, and some of the other head coaching jobs that are open are going to be looking at some of these same guys for defensive coordinator. So I'd let somebody else hire Jonathan Gannon. He's probably going to get a job, and I'd look more at Durante Jones, Christian Parker, and then Jim Leonard and see what happens out of those guys. So I want to shift gears because one of the other things I ended up taking a look at was seeing how the Cowboys could fare in the linebacker market. That's a big problem, for the team. And the team, Kenneth Murray's a free agent, so is Jack Sanborn. I don't anticipate us bringing back either one of those two guys. We traded for the guy from Cincinnati. At the same week that we traded for Quentin Williams, Logan Wilson, but we didn't get to really see him play much. But he has a cheap contract, so he'll probably be here for, Cowboys are probably going to hold on to him. So that would make your starters right now Logan Wilson, Demarion Overshone, and Shamar James with Marist Liufau, rotating in, which is pretty. It could use one more body and then one body in the draft. So I took a look at Quincy Williams, Alex Anzalone, who's going to be a free agent this year as well, and Devin Lloyd. So Devin Lloyd ended up being like the highest rated out of everybody as far as PFF is concerned. He was good in coverage. He was good against the run. But also Devin Lloyd is pretty versatile. So if you added a player like Devin Lloyd to Demarion Overshone, because you're going to be playing a lot of nickel anyway, I think that would make a very good linebacking core. And then on first downs, you can have Maris out there, you can have Shamar James out there, or you can draft a linebacker, in this upcoming draft early, and then, have that guy out there starting. Alex Anzalone is another one. He's a Mike linebacker, which we don't have. He was, I believe, 35 out of 90, or I'm sorry, out of 88 possible linebackers. He was better in coverage than he was against the run, but he was above average at both. And he's a true Mike linebacker. So he's a little bit older, than Devin Lloyd and then Quincy Williams. I believe Anzalone's like 32. And he'll be 32 at the start of the season. But yeah, he's getting a little longer in the tooth. But if you're looking for someone for a couple years, maybe a 1 or 2 year deal, just until you get the position figured out, Anzalone would not necessarily be a bad person to go out and sign. And then the last one is Quincy Williams. There was some talk about him at the trade deadline when the Cowboys are trading for Quinnen to try to get Quincy as well. They were actually trying to do both. It didn't end up working out for them, but honestly, if I'm thinking about it, Quincy Williams actually graded out pretty poorly. One of his poorest, and don't get me wrong, PFF isn't the end all be all, but it was one of his poorest seasons. He's 29. He's actually been, going down as far as grade is concerned over the last couple years. So while he might not be quite as bad as, let's say, Kenneth Murray or Jack Sanborn because he has a little bit more athleticism, it still shows that he's on decline. So he's going to be, according to Spotrac, one of the players that commands the higher dollar amount in the linebacker free agency. He's going to command a higher dollar amount. Devin Lloyd's going to command the highest. So I think that makes the Cowboys pretty much out on that. It looks like he's played himself into about a $20 million contract. Meanwhile, Quincy's paid himself into about a $9.5 million contract. Anzalone will probably cost you around 5 or 6. So if the Cowboys want to get, the Lions could just sign him back at that point, at that price, but also the Lions, have some cap situations they need to take care of themselves. So I think the Cowboys could sign Anzalone at a decent price. And I think that if they do sign Anzalone at that price, that'll help them be able to draft a little bit more pure in the first round. And maybe when one of these players come up at their position, they don't necessarily have to say, we need a linebacker, so we've got to take X guy at 20 or X guy at 12. It'll leave them to play a little more free. It'll also leave them with a short thing in the middle because Anzalone's he would be our best linebacker, last season, especially with Overshown kind of recovering from the injury. You add Anzalone in there, and then say you take a Sonny Styles at 12, and then you also have Overshown, even though I know they're both, pretty much to me, they're both weak side linebackers, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, they're both weak side linebackers. Sonny Styles played in the middle in college, so I'm pretty sure he'd have some versatility there as well. But maybe that'll allow your linebacker core to be a little bit more stable when the new coaching staff comes in. So on to the last thing here. So last week, I told you I watched 3 players, but I couldn't remember the linebacker's name. So I watched 2 more players this week, and now remember, it was C.J. Allen. So I watched C.J. Allen, I watched Jacob Rodriguez, and I watched Anthony Hill Jr. So let's start with C.J. Allen since I watched him last week, and I just ended up messing up when I came to give you guys a report. So the funny thing is he's the same size as Jacob Rodriguez, right? He's listed at 6'1", 235, but he looks bigger than Jacob Rodriguez. So I don't know if there's something there, as far as a little fudging of the height, and maybe the weight is accurate. Maybe Jacob Rodriguez really is 235, but I don't think he's 6'1". I think he's more like 5'10". But we'll see. I guess at the combine we'll get those true numbers. But C.J. Allen, I liked him. I think in between the tackles, like he would do pretty well for the Cowboys. I do not worry about him holding up, and it's funny because him and Jacob Rodriguez are listed at the same size, but I don't worry about CJ Allen holding up as a middle linebacker. He's not like lightning fast, but he does diagnose pretty okay, and he does seem to be a sure tackler. He has a little bit of pop when he arrives, and I like that. He seems to, even if he's guessing sometimes, he seems to guess right as far as where the guy's going, meeting the ball carrier. So I think, CJ Allen, all in all, he's probably my third best out of these 3. The next best would be Jacob Rodriguez. Now, Jacob Rodriguez, I do worry about holding up in the middle, but I also worry about him being a weak side linebacker or a strong side linebacker. I kind of worry about all those things because his 6'1", 235 looks a lot smaller than C.J. Allen's 6'1", 235. But I will say this. That's pretty much the only thing I got because the guy makes plays, whether it's forcing fumbles, whether it's getting interceptions and coverage, whether it's making stops in the backfield, whether it's diagnosing the play and then going and meeting the ball carrier and the whole, like, he does everything that you would want. And honestly, I feel like if he was 6'3", 235 pounds, like he doesn't even have to put in any weight. If he just had a couple more inches in height, he would probably be, talked about in the first round the same way Sonny Styles is being talked about right now. And then the last one, which is my favorite, is Anthony Hill Jr. I think he's the only one of the 3 that can be a true Mike linebacker. Like you could drop him right in the middle, pretty much day one. He's my favorite out of the 3. I think that he plays very well downhill. I think he does a great job going forward as a blitzer and attacking the pocket. Actually, I like how he plays on the edge as well. He does have a very good feel for timing and how to get to the quarterback. But I also liked him when I saw him in coverage too. I liked him in coverage. I think he has some athleticism. I think he runs the best out of the 3 and has the best size weight combination. And also one of the things I noticed about him, he's great at sifting through the trash, whether it's stacking and shedding, getting that lineman, and kind of stacking him up, making sure that he doesn't get into his body. And then once the ball carrier is kind of getting to him, getting rid of that lineman and being able to make the tackle. He's very physical when he tackles. And also my favorite trait is that he has the least path to the running back. Like, I can't tell you how many times I saw him go make the tackle where he had, basically it was like the most direct path to the ball carrier he takes. So I think that's great I do think that will come into play to hurt him at certain points in the NFL because you're going to have guys like Jahmyr Gibbs or guys like Bijan Robinson that specialize in destroying angles. So if you're taking the most direct path, because that guy is so fast that he's going to beat you to that spot and be to and through the hole before you can get there. So that's going to be a little bit of his game that he's going to need to work on and have a feel for. If he's, going against some of those guys, maybe making sure that his path is less direct and more wide or whatever have you to make sure that he's compensating for the speed of like those two guys specifically. But a lot of these power backs and a lot of these teams that run directly at you, I think he's going to be a great fit for that scheme. And I think he will be a great fit for the Cowboys no matter what scheme they deploy. Because, like I said, good as a blitzer, good going forward, but also decent in coverage. I think he's the most athletic of the three. And I think that he's got the IQ to see what he sees, get through all the trash, and get to the ball carrier. So he's my favorite. I actually like him just a little bit less than I like Sonny Styles, so he will be my number 2 linebacker. And speaking of Sonny Styles, I just want to apologize because I know in my last review I said I don't think Sonny Styles is a middle linebacker at the next level, but honestly, he's bigger than all these guys. He's 6'4", 243. So if I think that 6'3", 238 pound Anthony Hill Jr. can play middle linebacker, then I guess that means 6'4", 243 pounds Sonny Styles can play middle linebacker. So I've got to rethink that. Maybe I think also Hill might be a little bit a little bit stronger as far as stacking and shedding, or maybe I just saw more of it. Maybe I need to go find more Sonny Styles tape where he's kind of getting muddied and bloodied in the run game, and then I'll feel a little bit better about that. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit me up on Twitter at jmillerIYL. You can also hit me up at knockersdownthebottom at outlook.com, knockersdownthebottom at gmail.com. Any questions, any comments that you have, I'll take them here. I'll take them via email, via Twitter. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. But until next time, I'm your host, J Miller if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.